Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rooster AM. It's Ryan Nelson. Today I have someone special. It's been my mentor for years. Even when I was a pastor needs a pastor, a leader, someone to look over them, to keep them accountable. This has been that guy. Whenever I have a problem, no matter how bad that problem is, I can come to him and I know I'll always feel safe coming to him. But we have him here today, and I have a little bit of a problem. His name is Wade Burleson. He's not the problem. I have a problem. Um, it's wild, man. I called him the other day, and basically, I'm like, whenever you have a certain level of success, man, you start to get haters coming out of the woodwork that say things, and it's just like sometimes it can be like harmful, like to the soul and hurtful. Um, but you've been dealing with this for years. So you're the one I call and say, all right, you've been a troublemaker for years. I'm kidding. But how do you handle that? How do you handle that kind of stress?
Well, I think some people might call me a troublemaker, but it's never my intention to cause trouble. Uh, it's my intention to tell the truth and to love people wherever they are. Um, but, Ryan, when you do things that cause people discomfort, um, your success, maybe they wanted it and they didn't get it. Um, in my situation, they don't like what I say, what I stand for, then obviously you're going to experience attacks as you have done. So, you did call. I thought you handled it well. In fact, I don't think they've aired it yet, but Enid Buzz did a podcast with you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was y'all filmed that the day that you were kind of struggling with some of the.
Oh goodness, yeah, yeah. It was a real deal. I was really. We need to get into what it
Yeah,
is,
right.
but it was like very
Hurtful.
shocking and hurtful,
Yeah.
and I was just like, wow. And I wanted to do it took everything in me, but I'm really the Lord was at work in my heart.
Yeah.
I can tell you a year and a half ago, I would have reacted totally different. Um, but I don't
Well,
know.
I hope people watch that podcast and see. I think they'll see you're calm.
Mm,
You don't let the critics live in your head because
right.
you don't talk about them.
Yeah, I know.
And you just answer questions and move forward. So even though it bothered you, I think your response publicly uh, was very well done.
Well, thank you. It's I've been living the motto that you set down a few years ago. I may sometimes offend, but
Yes.
I'm never offended.
Yes.
I think that's what you say.
That's right.
And it was like that is a lot harder to live than to just say.
Yeah.
But once you start to realize, and this is what I started to realize through this process, even the past couple of days, is that I don't really care much what anyone has to say about me or think of me because my identity is not in what they say that I am. My identity is in the person who saved me on the cross.
Yeah.
So why should I care what they say or how they react? And knowing the truth is one thing, living it's another. It can be really, really hard. You know, but how do you help someone who is going through, because this happens, I'm going to be real, this happens all the time. I mean, look at Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was getting hammered
Yeah.
left and right all the time. He was getting death threats, he was getting everything. Politicians get it. When you were a politician, I'm sure you got, man, when you were a pastor, you probably got it worse. um, Actually, I think you did get it a lot worse as a pastor. And how do you what do you tell somebody who's going through that kind of opposition? What do they need to do, or how do they need to look at themselves?
It's a great question. Um, I'm going to say something that my friends may not fully comprehend, um, and may even be upset by. Um, but the motto is I sometimes offend, but I'm never offended. So I'm not offended even if you're upset. This particular issue is the major character flaw in our president.
Mm.
And it bothers me. Even though I love his policies, of course, voted for him and think he's a great president, I think the way he reacts to people who criticize him, people who judge him, people who hammer him in the media, I think lacks character, lacks class, lacks Christian grace. Now, people might say, oh, but he's the president. You don't expect him to be the pastor. No, I agree. Absolutely. He is the president. But I definitely want a president that displays Christian character. And that's the one area that I don't see it displayed.
Yeah, I think he struggles. I think his struggle is that he's grown up with a New York attitude his whole life, and it's how he's always won.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows how he is behind closed doors?
No,
But I
good
can
point.
tell you, in the public, he knows
Point.
one way on how to win, and his
Correct.
way of winning has been a New York attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And but once you've won, it's now time to say, okay,
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't think you have to be that way to get there. But if that he's already won, he's the president. So I get it if he's sitting with some foreign leader across the table. I'm going to New York this guy. I'm going to, but
Yeah.
for the country, yeah, I agree with you. I think there are parts of him that just
Yeah.
the outside of
Yeah.
him.
And by the way, in private, you bring up a good point. I mean, look at his children. They absolutely love him.
Mhm.
I mean, so obviously there's character in private. His good friends, uh, love him. But I think you're onto something. It's the public thing. And some might say, oh, but wait a second. That's the only way you get ahead, by destroying people who come against you.
No, Jesus didn't get ahead that way.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
The kingdom is upside down. The truth of the matter is, the people who come against their opponents like that, in arrogance and in pride, and putting them down, and verbally, and then, okay, God brings those people down.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. And I've heard this from a wise man once. You would rather him humble you by his words than by his ways.
Correct.
And trust me, I can tell you that. Like, listen to what he says. You don't want to be cut down. It can be very painful, and it takes a while to get up. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I thought the bullet getting close to him,
It did for a season. It humbled him.
Yeah.
No, it did, and he would say that. But you kind of you get away from it, and you kind of lose that. But I mean, we're not here to talk about the president. If I had a dime for every time people call me a Trumpite, or a Christian nationalist,
Yeah.
I'd be a multi-gazillionaire.
Right.
I no. I think our country is missing the class and the character and the Christian grace that generations of our leaders possessed and displayed.
I think what Charlie Kirk displayed.
No, I agree with
I actually believed that.
No,
I really believed he was going to be the president someday.
I understand. By
And
the way, you and I have, of course, have met him and talked to him, and
yeah,
the humility. People hated his words, but we've seen him gracious
so
and
lovely.
kind, and we would, he believed homosexuality was a sin against God, but I've never seen a man treat homosexuals with more tenderness and more grace and understanding and compassion. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I think he was the epitome of Christian grace.
And he was so young. He had a wise mind for such a young age.
Mhm.
And that's how, the older you get, your views change. Um, it is funny because I remember when I was a kid, my views were totally off. What I thought, man, and I'm gonna be real, like I'm gonna say this and probably regret saying it. I almost think when I was probably 17 years old, I would have probably been considered a socialist because in my mind I was like, I don't know why we all just don't help each other. I don't get it. Like, why is it that people are so greedy? Like, if you have all this money, if I had it, I would help these people. But then when you get older, you start to realize the more money you give to the government, they waste. And then you start to figure out, like, no, these wealthy people aren't hoarding their money. They're creating new businesses, which create jobs, which is actually helping people. And then as you start to pay taxes, you really start to, and then time goes by, you start to look back and you're like, man, my views were really jacked.
Yeah, that's funny. You know, it's interesting. We have a woman who murdered her husband. Uh, Oklahoma has a woman. She's on death row, about to be executed. Um, I won't go into the details of the story, but her husband grew up in Enid. Well, federal defenders appointed by the courts came to see me this week to talk to me about their efforts to get her off of death row. One of them was from New York, the federal defender. And by the way, our taxpayers are paying for it because the murderer didn't have any money. So we're paying for it. The other federal defender, who's appealing the death sentence that she received in the courts, was from California. So they were both pretty liberal politically. And we had a conversation very similar to what you just said about views, political views, socialism. And I said something, and I could just see their eyes go like that. And it clicked in their minds what I was saying. Mm-hmm. And here's what it was. Um, I told them that what I told you, if I had a dime for every time I was called a Christian nationalist, I'd be a millionaire. And then I said to them, I'm not a Christian nationalist at all. I am a Christian unashamedly. The true Christian nationalists are socialist and liberal Democrats. And of course, they were both socialist and liberal Democrats. And so I'm saying you're a Christian nationalist. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? I said, just think about it. You may not even call yourself a Christian. You may be an atheist or an agnostic, but you're advocating that the government act like what the church should be. You want open borders. You want the doors open to everyone. You want cashless bail. You want sinners to be released and forgiven and not punished. You want everyone to have everything the same, equality. You want to share food. You want people to pay for food for everyone. You want what the church should be, but you want the government to do it. The church should have open doors. The church should forgive sinners. The church should collect everything and give to the poor and let everybody have things in common.
A little buzzing. It's my AC. I've never done a podcast at this time, and my AC turns on every day. So my bad.
Yeah, I thought that was a B-52 bomber flying overhead. Yeah, really. So anyway, and I said, I'm a Christian, but I don't want that for the state. I think the state should close the borders, should punish criminals. The state should protect the liberty of people to be and do whatever they feel led to be and to do. I said, that's government, Romans 13. I said, so isn't it crazy that a Christian like me is not a Christian nationalist? I believe the state is the sword of justice for the evildoer. And I quoted Romans 13. But yet you, who may not even say you believe in Jesus, you want the nation to look like what I believe churches should be. And it clicked.
Well, I think you're right because I mean, well, when I say this, I'm not saying all churches.
Yeah.
But the general idea of church has failed in that. It's
Oh,
failed in that.
of
Like
course.
the government wouldn't have to do it if the church would have been doing it for years. But what happened, and this is my philosophy. Okay, I could be wrong. This is my view based on seeing things how it's done. Is when the church receives money, they start building themselves a
Empires.
country club,
Yeah.
and they're not building a new ship.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm like, don't build a big cruise ship and you
Yeah.
stay on it until you die. You
Yeah.
build a cruise strip, then you sell it and you make a bunch of small boats and say, go out and build more
Yeah.
cruise ships,
Yeah.
and then take those and help people. Like,
Yeah.
the Acts is very clear on how you help people.
Yeah.
Jesus is very clear on how you help the poor and the people who are in need. But instead, we're worried about things that have literally nothing to do with that. Now, again, I'm not saying all churches.
No, not all, but most.
Yeah, but most of them are.
And by the way, Ryan, most Americans don't understand that 501c3 nonprofit status was granted by the government to nonprofits, to churches, on the condition that churches would do socially for people what the government was never designed to do.
Right.
It should be churches that should be feeding people. It should be churches that should be distributing money. It should be churches that should open their doors and say, how can we help the community? You know, it'd be a great question to ask. How many churches, when food stamps went away, Saturday, November 1, we're, recording this on October 30th. How many churches are opening their doors saying, come and get food?
Right. Should be. And here's the other: if the government's going to spend money on food stamps, they should give it to the church, who can actually find the people who are in need. But then you're locked to the church. So it's like, or the government. So the best thing, I I propose being a for-profit church, but I get a lot of people saying that's terrible.
No,
And
I agree. But I am for nonprofit churches if, now I'm going to offend the people you don't offend.
Right.
Take away food stamps, take away all of the money being given by the government to the poor, and churches provide for the poor. Churches build shelters, churches provide food. But, by the way, as you know, too often evangelical churches take the money they get and they buy big houses for staff, planes, and so on. You work with me. I mean, what would we do? We'd pass the offering place, let people take money out of it, right?
Yeah.
Remember during COVID? What did we do? We were taking food to people in their houses. We were putting veterans in houses that we bought. I mean, that's what we did. People look at me. I mean, I live next door to you. I live in a pretty big house. I guarantee you the church didn't pay for that.
No. I mean, people know your wife is the real.
Yeah.
No.
Not only my wife, but in addition, I have a degree in finance. So I do things myself personally.
Right.
It wasn't a church salary, but the whole point that we're making is churches have, I feel, lost sight of our purpose. And our purpose is to keep the doors open to everyone, even sinners. Don't you have a song coming out? It's not about the words you pray to Jesus. It's about the way it's
About how you treat Judas. Yeah.
When's that coming out? Pretty quick.
Yeah. A few weeks.
Churches should keep their doors open. You remember when we had prisoners in the balcony? You remember wearing orange?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Keep the doors open to everyone. There's a lady came by and said, ugh, man, we have to sit by those people in orange. We're visiting. We're not gonna come back.
Okay. Okay. Let's say
You know what? There's a bunch of churches that don't have people in orange that, go to them. And feel free. We love you. Go. But churches then should feed the hungry. Churches should provide shelter, visit the sick. Churches should be doing what the government is now doing.
Yeah.
And it's a shame.
It is. It
But-
really is. And the gospel is the number one thing that you should be doing, and then helping the poor should be the second. That should be, and helping the poor is doing the gospel.
That's what Jesus said.
Yeah.
And they said, when did we see you, Jesus? naked? When did we see you hungry? And Jesus said, when you saw the least of these in that way, you saw me. I mean, yeah, no, I agree. It's about the good news. But anyway, we got off on that. I think from a criticism standpoint, when I ran for politics, oh my goodness, I ran for Congress. People came out of the woodwork just to say all kinds of things about me, untrue things, things to slam my character, and anonymously often. Thank the Lord, I had learned a long time ago. Just pay no attention to it, and I didn't. Ryan, here's one thing that if anybody listens to this podcast, I want them to take away this one thing and never forget it. When people say things or do things against you, you remember it for a long time. But the people around you forget it within an hour. And I learned a long time ago that when people said untrue things about me, best thing I could do is just to remain silent because people forget it in an hour. But the more I try to combat it, the the more I give credence and give coverage to what is untrue.
And there's also why does somebody deserve it? Why do they deserve my energy and time
Yeah.
when they're saying something that I don't mind criticism. Someone can criticize me all they want. It's the blatant attack, the untruths, where that's when it starts to eat at me because
But isn't that criticism though?
yeah, it's a form of criticism. But like if someone says, "Hey, Brian, I think that you could have approached it this way, it would have been a better way," I'm okay with that. I'm like, yeah, that's great. But if someone says, you know, Wade, you never wrote any of your sermons, you used AI. It's like,
Yeah, you're a plagiarist.
yeah, it's like, oh, dude, like you are going to drive me crazy because that's not even true. That's where it starts to really eat up inside. But you do have to. Again, I've really been struggling with this for a long time,
Yeah.
and it's just recent that I've kind
Yeah,
of
I understand.
battled through that. Is I look back and said, okay, when I look in the mirror, I see Jesus. That's what I have
Yeah,
to see,
absolutely.
not what they say they see.
Absolutely. And here's what Spurgeon said. Uh, I learned this many years ago. Uh, Spurgeon was often criticized in the newspaper. Charles Spurgeon, for those who don't know, he was called the Prince of Preachers. He preached, to thousands of people.
Got his library right there.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah. You got Spurgeon sermons right there. I mean, prime ministers would come and listen to him. The Queen would come. So he was in the heart of London in Southwark, and he had a visitor, a very prominent businessman, come to him and said, "Mr. Spurgeon, have you read what they said about you in the paper this morning?" Mr. Spurgeon said, "No." And the guy told him. Mr. Spurgeon said, "Well, that's okay." And the guy said, "But Mr. Spurgeon, it's not true." Spurgeon stopped and said, "You're right. It's not true. But the fact of the matter is, there are things about me that are true, that are much worse than what they've written."
By the grace of God, they're telling this lie and not the truth, because the truth would be a lot worse.
That's his point. Yeah. And so when people lie about me, I just remember, well, they're lying, yes, but the truth is worse than lies. So don't worry about it.
It is. I don't know if it takes a humbling or understanding, or maybe it's a combination, or for certain people, it's just different. Um, but you have to get knocked off of your self righteousness, where you think I'm right and I have to be right. You don't have to be right, because the truth is, even in your righteousness, you're probably wrong. Um, even when you think you're doing something good, what's the true motive behind it? And when you dig deep enough, almost every motive in your life is probably prompted by some sort of selfishness and sin. And that really brings you right back to, I need Jesus every day of your life.
Yeah. In fact, I don't know if you've ever heard me say this before. I said it publicly, and it really bothered some people. I said, I don't think in my 40-year career as a pastor, I ever made a hospital visit, conducted or officiated a funeral, or did anything for anyone in ministry with pure motives. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, I don't think I've ever done anything. I said, there's always been a tinge or a taint of selfishness, self promotion in anything that I've ever done. But you know what? That doesn't bother me because I know God loves me, whether my motives are pure or impure.
Right.
So, and
You got to look really deep. You have to look real, because there are times where you probably felt like this was a pure motive, but if you really look deep,
good point.
you really look deep.
But here's what I would say, Ryan. I don't really even look.
Right. You just know.
I just know,
Yeah.
and I accept, and I'm okay because you said it earlier. The one who counts is God.
Yeah.
And He loves me with impure motives.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. Um, I watch Fox News sometimes, or every now and then CNN. That's pretty rare, like a blue moon. Uh, but it's amazing, and even Fox broadcasters do this. They go to the motives of the people they don't like. And they'll say something like, well, he did this because he wants, or she did that because she desires. And the moment they say that, I'm like, wow, they've just lost all credibility of me. Because nobody knows another person's motives. And when you start going to motive,
It's witchcraft.
well, you're playing God.
You're acting like you know their minds and their thoughts, and you're not a prophet and you're not a witch. So, it's kind of a.
So just let people be, and they do what they do. Now, somebody might say, yeah, but by their fruits you will know them. Well, now maybe so, but then why don't you just point out the conduct and say something like, no, I don't know their motive. They may have sincere intentions, they may not. But their action is something that I think should be called into question. But it's amazing how in this volatile, uh, ugly, um, angry society, Facebook, Twitter, X, and so on, people go to motive. Leave it alone. And in terms of your own motive, just accept the fact that you're probably always selfish, but rest in your identity in Christ and God's love for you, and just do what you do. And that's how you can say, I will sometimes offend, but I'm never offended. If I sometimes offend you and you're upset with me and angry and yell and curse at me, yeah, I'm not going to be offended.
Right. And it is odd. Like, there'll be days that I really feel like I'm just in tune with the spirit all day. Like, I'm feeling it. I know it, and within 10 minutes, you can find yourself
No, of course.
like, what am I
No,
doing?
no, of
Like,
course.
I'm trying so hard today.
No, of course.
And then you go, wait, I need to stop trying.
Yeah, bingo.
Because the Old Testament showed us
Yeah.
that you can try all you want and it will never work. You have to rest in His grace,
Correct.
and that's where the.
Correct. But people might say, oh yeah, but if you stop trying, then you're not going to please other people, or you're not going to be what you need to be to your spouse, to your kids, to your church, and so on. And my response is, wait, look, I am who I am. And if somebody feels like I'm not measuring up, they can tell me. And if they tell me, all I do immediately is, hey, will you forgive me? I don't even question. Will you forgive me?
Yeah.
And you know, we were in our women's Bible study over at Astoria the other day, and my wife's there with me, and you know, we're going through Ezekiel, and I don't know what it was about in terms of the text, but the subject came up. How many times do you ladies think I seek forgiveness of my wife every day? About how many times? And they were kind of quiet, not sure what they should say. So I said, Rochelle, tell them, how many times do I say, Rochelle, will you forgive me? Per day. And she said, many, many. I said, can you put a number on it? Average. Maybe a dozen. And it is as natural as breathing to me. So if it's pointed out, you know, just say, if I've done something to offend, will you forgive me? That's it. And somebody says, yeah, but if you really meant it, you wouldn't do it again. No, that's performance. I'll never make a promise I'll never do it again, ever.
I have learned my lesson from that. I have learned my lesson from that because
Yeah.
I've been like, I'm never doing that again. And then when I do, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, so I do the same. Like, you know what? I know my heart.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I also know that I am corrupt, but I also know I'm saved.
Correct.
And I know I have a spirit as well that can
Right.
guide me through corruption.
Right.
It's sometimes hard to live all of that in balance. For me, it was hard. I didn't realize it until I went to the doctor, man. I lived if you watch this podcast and go back to our first one and watch it, I think you'll see a radically different, uh, just presentation of myself because I lived in 80% of my day depression. I did not know it. I thought that's just how you lived. I thought every day you lived trying to find 10% of happiness. And then after, and all it was a B12 folic acid. Like once I started taking that, I went from 80% of the day depressed to 80% of the day saying, my goodness, look at the trees. They're pretty. You know, like I never noticed that before. And only 20% of my day, you know, and it's just like but even in all of that, like you gotta, you learn through it. You learn about yourself, who you are, what truth is, what's not truth. That was a real struggle for me, but the difference between then and now is massive. And a lot of that is the perspective of truth. Like, what is truth? And the truth is, I cannot perform my way, and I have to accept that I'm corrupt.
Yeah.
And once you accept, and then all of a sudden, even the people online who are saying what they say, I don't really hate them.
Absolutely.
I actually like. There's been two instances so far, and I don't know. People might know what I'm talking about, but here's the bottom line: those guys, I love them.
Yeah.
I'm not happy with what they're doing, and it does frustrate me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I love them because I know I'm just as corrupt.
Bingo. Yeah. You know, when you're 10% happy and 90% depressed, often you'll go after people's approval in order to switch the depression into happiness. And so there's a manipulation of an environment to get a certain response from the people listening to you, observing you, watching you.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to perform in order to get the, hey, great job, you know, great job. But when that flips, and it's 90% happiness. Oh, the trees are beautiful. Oh, you know, this. Then you're not needing people's acceptance through their verbal praise. And you have a purpose and a meaning that comes from God, and you fulfill it regardless of whether or not people are offended. And the way it comes across, Ryan, is what I call a relaxed state. And I see, and this is a compliment, I see that you're relaxed. You are Ryan Dale Nelson. You are who you are by the grace of God, and you don't have to perform in order to be praised and accepted because your God already sings over you and accepts you. And I understand what you're saying about the corruption part. I really do. I understand. But I know you well enough to know your theology is, from God's standpoint, you're a saint. You are perfectly righteous.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there is no corruption. He sees no sin in his people. The corruption is what other people think. And so you just admit it and say, yeah, I'm not going to fight it. I am corrupt. But from God's perspective, he sees no corruption. So you live in the identity of how God sees you, and you just accept the fact others may think you're corrupt, and you get to the point where you say, like Spurgeon, if they knew the whole truth, they'd be saying things that were true, and the truth is worse than the lies they're saying. So just
Yeah,
let them
just let
alone.
it be. Yeah, yeah, that's so true. I will say, I remember uh, I would pastor a church. I would give a message, and when I was done, if I didn't have someone say that was incredible, that changed my life, or that was this, I would go in the room and thought I failed them, and it was because I felt like I needed that. I believe it was the dopamine. Like I had no dopamine, so like so it was like them saying it was great, made me feel really good for a moment, like I'm doing something great, and now I'm like, man, I spent so much energy trying to do that, then just be in the moment and present.
Steve Mortensen used to be on our staff. I think he went on to become pastor at First Baptist of Pulpa and so on. In fact, I pray for Steve regularly. He's having some physical problems that are pretty serious. But years ago, he tells this story. He was on staff, but he didn't want me to come as pastor. He thought I was too young, uneducated, and so on, which was all true. Um, and he said to me after a service, about 2 years into me pastoring, that was the greatest message I've ever heard. And Steve tells the story that my response was this: uh, well, thank you, Steve, but I don't care. He said, what do you mean you don't care? I said, I don't care that you think it's the greatest message I've ever preached. Because one day you may think it's the worst message that I've ever preached. And the truth is, I'm not preaching for you to think it's good and great or horrible and bad. I'm preaching what God has laid on my heart, and the Holy Spirit will use it as he sees fit. So he said, he went on to pastor. He said, I never forgot that, because he said what you said. He said, when I preached, it was like, what are people going to say? So I think you and I both have grown in our understanding of who we are, and we're comfortable in our own skin, and we're just letting people rip us, and we're okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. I'm still working on it, I know. But the difference between me and you is you easily walk and lay in it. I mentally know it's true, and so I have to lean on the logic of like, hey, this is true, so I need to not bite.
I'm also quite a bit older than you, so I
Yeah.
think in a couple of decades you may be where I am. Because I mean, this it doesn't happen overnight. Uh, but anyway, hey, I know you don't care, and it doesn't mean anything. But congratulations on your song Enid, on your song. It's not the words you say to Jesus, but it's how you treat Judas, which is coming out, and all the things. And if it hadn't have been for the Lord's work in your life, you wouldn't be at this spot right now.
No, I wouldn't. It, I remember, yeah, we can go to that'll be another time, but I just remember what you said a year ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, and
You remember that?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being
Oh,
here.
you're welcome.
You got any closing words?
No, I just say this. I'm dead serious. I don't know if they heard the air conditioner. I genuinely thought that was a B-52 flying over.
It's because my unit's right there behind that wall.
Like,
Yeah. and it never goes off because I always do mine at 10 in the morning or in the evening, and like we're doing it in the middle of the day, and I was like, I did forgot to turn it off. So
Here's the final word I'll say to you: consistency is key, and you are consistent in your podcast. You're consistent in your leadership. You're consistent in your love for this community and for your family. Just keep being consistent. I started a blog in 2006 when the Southern Baptist Convention thought blogs were internet pornography. Literally, that's what they called it. And I've been blogging now for over 20 years, just consistently. And I see the impact that you're making online. So just keep on keeping on being Ryan Dell Nelson.
yeah, and just real quick that anybody, if you want, every Tuesday and Thursday, you're doing your Bible studies on Astoria Ministries,
Consistency.
and I'm like, go be there, because I will tell you, it's deep dive Bible study. It's not that surface level, and I think you're giving such a great service because you could charge people for what you're doing, and you don't. So if you guys have the opportunity, go over to Astoria Ministries, follow the page,
Or go to YouTube and you can watch. I mean, it's not for everybody, but if you really want to learn a book like Ezekiel, or like Chronicles, or books you typically wouldn't study. Yeah.
Not what you're going to get on a Sunday.
No.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thanks again.
hey, you're welcome. Thanks, buddy.